Very good evening to all of you. I invite you to the second day on this. I hope all of you can hear me. Could just put a message in the chat window, it would be great. Welcome back to session 2 of the sectoral discussion on issues revolving around GST. Last week, Mr. Gabal had taken us through some intricate issues revolving around the specific areas of GST like ITC, valuation, time of supply, and so on. Today, we'll look into the specific sector of entertainment and media industry. Yesterday, my partner Yash took you all through the hospitality sector. Without wasting much time, we'll straight away go into the agenda for the day. Today, we'll be planning to cover 3 specific sectors: entertainment, which would generally cover areas like film, television, and other contents, or regular mode of entertainment, which is quite used by us in today's days of this lockdown, where a lot of us are using Netflix, Amazon, Hotstar, and all to entertain ourselves and to be sane in these troubling times. The second area would be the media industry, where we'll be covering specific areas of print, radio, web, television, advertisements, and television media primarily, various intricate issues involved in that particular industry also. And the next aspect of intermediaries, taxation of agents, which is a very common entity in the entire media segment. Lastly, we'll also look into the event sector. A lot of events are organized day in, day out as businesses. People are also participating in those events or organizing. There are some intricate issues involved on both the sides, which we'll be covering during the discussion today. I'll try to complete it within my scheduled time. If there's any issue, please send me a chat and I'll try to revert to it. Queries will be taken up at the end of the session. So let us go with the first area of today's discussion: entertainment. Entertainment, there are 2 aspects involved. One is that for entertainment, there has to be some content, and the content has to be developed, produced. That's the first part of the entertainment industry, the content production process. Before we go into this, there is also one important point which all of you need to take note of, is that this sector is quite regulated under the Copyright Act 1957, which says that all these various works, like film or sound recording or literary works, there are different classes of works which they have notified, and they have said that various rights will be subsisting in those works. So when you create a film, your product is, though for a commercial purpose, say you have sold a film, your actual product which you are selling would be the rights which are subsisting in those films. This aspect is very important. And there are different types of rights, like I said, one is a literary works. So when a film is done, the first item is the script of the film, the idea, the concept based on which the film is made. And the first activity in the entire film production or content production, it can be a television show also, for instance, is the script or the idea. That is the first step which is undertaken in the content production process, which is done by the script writer or script writer, someone like Salim Khan, father of Salman Khan, who is a script writer. He develops an idea, he envisages some idea, and then he approaches a film producer, a production house, who decides whether they want to convert that idea, that concept into a film or not. But it's not that simple. There are various aspects involved. A film production process involves finalization of a film director, a person who will actually be involved in the creation of a cinematographic film, and a decision as to whether a person will be able to deliver to the film as required or not. So that is the first part, deciding the film director. Second aspect is music director. A film without music is not proper. So you also need a music director for the film. These are the people who are generally involved in the execution or the creation of the content of your cinematographic film or sound recording. The next important part of this production process is finalizing the star cast. And that would include your lead actors, the support actors, and all those people who will be working in the film, who will be appearing when we go and watch it on a cinema hall or on a cell phone, for instance. These are the people who are the front runner. And lastly, the support team. To execute the entire process, there's a whole list of people involved who do it, ranging from spot boys to technicians, and finalizing them is also an important part. At this juncture, it is also important to note that the production houses, the entire process is a cost-inducive process. So while this process is being undertaken, you also need financiers, and that is where the commercialization or the enabling of earning revenue from a project undertakes. Once an idea is finalized and initial work is done, the groundwork, or which generally in the industry calls as pre-production activities done, a film producer generally approaches a distributor to whom he will agree to transfer the rights in the film, the various rights, primarily the distribution rights, for a consideration. And based on the consideration which he announces, he will decide on the cost or how he will incur the expenditure. Then the third part comes to production activity, finalizing the location where the film is to be shot. This is very important because everything cannot be done in your at one film city only. You need an outdoor location, you need an indoor location, and even for outdoor locations, some might be in different states of the country. For example, if you want to shoot it in a desert area, you will go to Rajasthan, and if you want a scenic area, you will go to Jammu and Kashmir. And when you say that I'm going to shoot at different locations, there are logistics issue involved because there will be arrangements to be made, which we discuss in a separate slide. So this is the production activity, and lastly, post-production activity. Once you complete the shooting, film is not ready. There are a lot of post-production activities done, such as dubbing, editing, applying special effects to some movies in case of sci-fi movies and all. So all those activities. What is the logic behind going behind these 4-5 steps in the film production process? Each aspect or each step of this film production process has its own set of issues involved in the GST. Let us take a look into each of them one by one. The first issue is that of finalizing of a script. Finalizing of a script. Like I said, a script writer or a person writes a script. It's a concept. He writes a script and then he goes to a producer saying that I have an idea. Do you want to make a film based on that? If the producer agrees, he's saying, okay, I'm agreeing with that. So I will give you some consideration. Under the GST law, they have said that for different kind of works which are covered in the copyright set, in specific cases, if service provider is a specific class of person and service receiver is a specific class of person, the liability to pay tax will be on the service receiver. For example, in the case of literary works, when I say literary works, what do we generally mean by literary work is the script of the film, something which has been written by him, or even dialogue writers. All those kind of activities get covered under literary works. And if the service provider is an author is defined under the Copyright Act, and the service receiver is a publisher, the liability to pay tax gets covered under the publisher. Now here there are some issues involved, primarily that many times this author are also registered under GST. And they are also charging GST on their output service provider. Why? Because there is substantial confusion which revolves around whether there is a transfer of copyright in original works relating to literary works or not. Primarily, the confusion is on account of only one aspect, is that at times there's an independent contract for transfer of actual original works, and at times there's a work for hire, meaning a producer hires a dialogue writer saying that you will work, you will be part of my crew as and when they go for shooting, and you will be writing dialogues for everyday shoots. So sometimes there are contractual manners in which contracts are executed, saying that he's an employee or he's hired for work, and the contract specifically says that when the work is done, any copyright which subsists in those works shall belong to the producer only. At the contracting stage itself, the right has been waived. And so there is confusion. In industry, we have seen generally that people have taken a position to say that if my supplier or the author or music composer is charging the tax, I will not pay tax under reverse charge. If he is not charging, I will pay tax under reverse charge. That would be a safe position. Only thing is to make sure that even where the supplier is charging tax, let's say the author is charging tax, in the first case, of course, they have given an option that an author can charge tax if he is registered under GST. It's an optional. The first entry which we are referring to here, just a second. This particular entry is optional. In case of literary works, if an author is registered, he has an option to charge GST, provided he has given a declaration to that effect to his commissioner. And once he has exercised that option, he cannot change it, of course. Second case, there is no such option. So in second case, you have to be very careful when you are receiving some services from music composer, photographer, or artist or the like. Here, there is one part which we need to take note of, is that music composer means a person who has developed a dhun or just a tune for that song. But if a music composer also takes an activity, let's say he will develop the tune and he will be also involved in the sound recording process, in the process of creating the song, the sound recording itself, then the issue of composite versus mix supply might come into play, and a view can be taken that the supplier is providing service of transfer of copyright in sound recording, and therefore this reverse charge entry is not applicable. However, in most of the cases, our advice to the clients would be that if your vendor is not charging tax and there is an iota of doubt regarding whether there's a transfer of copyrights or not, it is advisable that you take a conservative view and pay tax under reverse charge. The reason behind this is that the entire decision will be based on another act, and the tax officer might not be that conversant with that act. If you have paid tax, the credit will flow. But if you paid tax at the time of assessment, for example, the credit might not flow back to you, resulting in an unnecessary cost of tax, interest, and penalty. If you take an aggressive view on this side. The next issue is a location issue. The next issue is a location issue. Like I said, in case of film industry, you have to go to shoot in your studio, which is in Film City, and there might be outdoor shoots. You go to different locations. It can be in India, outside India. Now, what happens in many times when you go for that outdoor shoot, it's not a one-man job. Your entire crew of 100, 200 people will have to travel for that entire activity. And when that happens, there are associated costs involved. For example, if you go to Rajasthan for a shoot, you need to make stay arrangements for the entire crew, the entire arrangement of food, providing food and beverage facilities to them. Apart from that, there are other expenses like travel expenses from the stay place where you are staying to the shoot location. Expenses at shoot location, you take some property on rent for shooting there. There will be taxes charged. Now the issue here is that a lot of these expenses will be under the property basket, meaning the supplier there will be charging you CGST and SGST tax. Whereas you are not in Rajasthan, you are not registered in Rajasthan, but you are registered in Maharashtra. And when that happens, we have already discussed in the earlier session of Mr. Gabawala, the credit eligibility might be a challenge or might not be eligible itself. And that might be a substantial cost for you because many films at times happen that they are not shot in Mumbai at all. The entire shooting might be at some other location. So in this case, there are two probable solutions which you can work around, which we have advised clients to work around. One is that you go and take registration in that other states. Let's say if you feel that substantial shooting of a film or some substantial part of the shooting is going to take place in Rajasthan, you take a registration in Rajasthan. You might take your own office on hire, or even someone might lend you their address for obtaining that registration, and book all purchase orders, all expenses incurred. You provide your Rajasthan GST to vendor. What will happen is all the vendors will bill you to Rajasthan, so you can claim that credit in Rajasthan. But now your credit eligibility is an issue because Rajasthan does not have an income. So for that, we will take a position, or you take a position that Rajasthan has provided service to the Mumbai office, and therefore all the costs which are incurred in Rajasthan office, that can be cross-charged to Mumbai. Pay 18% IGST as a support service or line production service, which is also a common factor in the entertainment industry, and thereby enabling you claim the credit. But when you take a registration in Rajasthan, there is one more challenge you need to take. You need to know. When a registration is taken, there are associated compliances you have to do, like filing your returns, getting audits, and more importantly, getting your assessments done. When you take a registration, all this added responsibility, when compared with the time for which you have to obtain the registration. Let's say if it's a film shoot, you might be there only for a couple of months, and then that office also will be giving up, and you come back to Mumbai office. But then if an assessment order is passed X party, we will never know, and one day you get a surprise notice saying that there's an attachment of your bank account. To avoid such situation, there is a second option. You hire a local line producer in that state who will do all these activities which we have just discussed and charge you. The added advantage of doing this is, one, no assessment challenges on your head, and two, credit matching, mismatch activity will be done by him. You have to follow up with only one vendor as compared to that line producer who has to follow up with the 100 vendors. There is one challenge here. The line producer might charge you a bit more, his margin, but you can compare and contrast what are the benefits of going with the line producer versus whether it's advantageous to go with a separate registration. There is one part that you can take care of. Second aspect that we can discuss is the place of supply issue when you are shooting in overseas. Now, see, when we are in India, we can manage somewhat any things. But if you are in outside India, if you want to go and shoot in Europe or UK or US, you need to obtain a lot of permissions there for shooting at public places and all. So what film production houses do is they hire a line producer in those states, in those countries, who make the arrangement and charge back to you. Now here the advisable route is that many expenses are such which you can arrange from India only. It is advisable that you do it from India, make remittances through 15C, 15CB and have direct relation with those vendors. Like if you want to make hotel bookings, you can book it from India itself. You don't need a line producer for that. Only for cases where you cannot do it without a line producer, it's advisable to have that line producer. Why? Because see, if they have appointed a line producer, and if he charges a lump sum amount, let's say, which would include hotel accommodation or local expenses, on those expenses you will be liable to pay tax under reverse charge mechanism because of a recent ruling of Udayan Cinema Private Limited. So what is better is that you have a separate agreement with the such a line producer. You tell him that you charge your specific service charges, which will be a fraction of the total expense which he incurs on your behalf. And for the expenditure which is actually incurring on your behalf, like let's say hotel accommodation or some vehicle arrangement expenses, you treat it as a reimbursement of expenses. If you cannot do it directly, if you cannot directly deal with those vendors. And only to the extent of service charges which are levied by your line producer, you pay tax under reverse charge. In all other cases, you take a position that they are reimbursement of expenses, so not liable to tax. Secondly, the place of supply is outside India. So that is one point. Of course, it is important to note that under service tax regime, when there's a reverse situation, we have seen cases where department has denied export of service benefit. Meaning, if a foreign product producer wanted to shoot in India and had taken service of a line producer, the same line producer was denied export benefits, saying that since the work is done in India, you cannot claim export benefit. Of course, we do not agree with that position and the matter is yet to attain finality, but we believe that in case of line producers, if it's a foreign line producer, you will be liable to pay tax under reverse charge at 18%. So it is advisable that you have two contracts, just to reiterate, one contract for service charge on which you will pay tax under reverse charge mechanism, and second for reimbursement of expenses, such as hotel accommodation if it is arranged through that line producer, on which you will not pay tax under reverse charge because the place of supply is outside India. Next activity, post-production process. Like I said, there are a lot of post-production activities done. One of the keys is making the final product. When you have shot a film, they are on draft reels or they are on draft mode. Those short portions have to be finalized. There is an editing work done, various special effects applied to that video. And for that, many times they send it to a recording studio which is outside India on a CD or through online means. Now, there's a view that this amounts to goods which have been sent outside India. And therefore, if any work is done by those recording studios or foreign service providers on your recorded content, it would not be liable to pay, you would not be liable to pay tax under reverse charge because the services that the foreign person would be providing would be in relation to goods which have been sent outside India for performance. Same way, when if you are a recording studio or if you are providing similar services to content of foreign production houses or foreign clients, there might be a challenge. Your services might not qualify as export of service because the place of supply would be the location of supply because the goods are coming to you for getting that work done. Next, the credit issues. While GST is an input tax, value-added taxation, there are a lot of credit challenges or a lot of challenges on claiming on the credit front. Primarily because a lot of expenses incurred are in the nature of personal consumption. Let us go one by one the identified issue. The first issue that is being faced is in the context of vanity van. You know, when the shoots takes place, they are at not in a proper area. So for at least for the lead star cast or lead actors, the producer makes available some facilities in the form of a vanity van, which will have, where they can sit and get ready, apply makeup and all those stuff, or take rest. The first issue remains is whether credit of such vanity van can be taken or not. What are these vanity vans? Generally, these vanity vans are trucks or buses which are converted into or which are modified to the as per the wish of the person who is owning those vanity van. So the credit is not allowed in case where you are renting or hiring a motor vehicle having capacity of more than 13 of less than 13 people. In this case of vanity van, they are generally bus, and therefore the capacity is of more than 13 people, and therefore the question of non-eligibility to claim credit would not arise. However, it is possible the department might challenge that decision, and they might say that no, this is a vanity van and not a bus per se, and therefore you should not claim credit. In our view, you should be eligible to claim credit. Second issue, more challenging, is the food and beverage expense. Why? Because there's a substantial cost involved around food and beverages, and credit is denied. See, Section 17(5) says credit of this kind of expense would be allowed, provided they're a part of a composite or mixed supply being made by you. So for example, if I am, okay, so for example, let's say I'm organizing a seminar, full day seminar, and there's a food arrangements done for the delegates. I will be eligible because when someone attends this seminar, there's a added component that they will be getting food, and therefore becomes a part of a composite supply. But in case of copyrights transfer, in case of film industry especially, when they incur shooting expenses, their outward supply is transfer of copyright. Or in case of line producers, which are generally relevant in case of television industry, their outward supply is to supply content. Now, when that content is supplied or copyright is supplied, it's a single supply. There are not multiple supplies involved. The buyer is not concerned with whether the F&B is being sold to the crew or not. And therefore, it would be difficult, or I would say impossible to say that food and beverages are supplied as a part of a composite or a mixed supply. There is only a single supply which you are going to make, and therefore credit would not be available. Same would apply for the next line item also. Beauty treatment, health services, cosmetic and plastic surgery. You apply it on the artist or the star cast which is appearing on, who are acting in your film or television show. But it is not a part of a supply that you are making. Your supply is that of transfer of copyrights or supply of content. And there's a single supply. So the question of there being a concept, there being a composite or a mixed supply does not arise. And therefore, even this credit would not be available. Fourth part, hiring of vehicles, vessels, aircrafts, etc. for the film shoot. Again, now many times there is a need for use of various vehicles for the shooting purposes. You get cars or even aircraft, private aircrafts for shoot. All those kind of expenses, credit will not be available. Same applies to gifts given to the cast on completion of film. Many times, let's say, when a shoot is wound up, there's a party arranged by the producer, and they give gifts to the actors who acted in the film or people who participated in the shooting of the film. Credit will not be available. Second painful area for film entertainment sector is that there is no refund available to them. Reason being that while they are in an inverted rate structure, the rate of tax on their output side, which is at 12%, whereas the rate on their expenses is generally 18%, they will not be able to claim refund under inverted rate structure also, because inverted rate structure talks about difference of rate in case of inputs and output services and output supplies. Here, majority of our inputs would be classifiable as input service, like rental expense or actor fees, and therefore claiming of refund would be always a challenge. Of course, the point remains that substantial credits would be getting covered under block credit basket also. So that's one point you can take care of. This was the first part which we say about content production, how a content is created. The next area is the content distribution. How do you monetize on the content that you have created? How do you earn from the content that you have created? The most common is that you transfer the copyrights in that content to different people, generally distribution houses like Foxstar, Viacom, Eros, or to music labels. The music rights which can be transferred to music labels like Sony Music or Zee Music and so on. In a part, there are other revenue streams for entertainment sector. One is in-film advertisements or promotion activities. Many times companies pay money to film producers to use their products in the film, to advertise their products, like someone might use a Banyan brand and pay something to the producer for that. That will be liable to tax at 18%. Same way, line production services, if a film producer gives subcontract some of the production work and hires a line producer, that would attract tax at 18%. Revenue from ticketing sales, generally it is 18% if your value is more than 100 rupees, value of ticket. If your ticket value is less than 100, it is 12%. But I doubt in metro cities there would be any cinema which would be having a ticket rate of less than 100 rupees. Next part, revenue from F&B sales. A lot of these theaters also sell food and beverages in their premises. In our view, that would attract tax at 5% only. What are the issues on the revenue side for the film sector or entertainment sector? One particular issue that we have seen is on the context of valuation. When a film producer visits or approaches a distributor that I have this concept with me, I'm planning a film on this script. Would you like to be a part distributor for me? Would you like to buy rights from me? The distributor also gets a substantial say in that process. He can say that, no, I want a proper actor, I want a better actor on this film because I want to make it a larger film. And he says, okay, for the lead actor, the payment of fees would be done by me directly. And the agreement would say that the liability to pay to the lead actor will be on the film distributor. Under service tax regime, we have seen some cases where in such cases, the film producer should say that no, your value of service is not 100 rupees, but 100 plus the amount which that distributor has paid directly to the actor or to some third party. In our view, that issue will not continue under GST if if the liability to pay to that third party is cast on the distributor. You will be, as a film producer, will be liable to pay tax only on the value of supply which you have made to the film producer, and that's been accepted as per the agreement. The next issue, permanent versus temporary transfer of copyrights. This challenge was faced even under the pre-GST regime, but on different footing as to what tax to be levied, whether it is service tax or VAT. Under GST, that issue has been completely done away with. Why? Because the GST rate on supply of copyrights, whether temporary or permanent, has been at 12% only. But there is some challenge which we foresee in case of cross-border transactions. Let's say you're transferring copyrights on perpetuity basis to someone who is outside India. Now, when you're transferring copyrights on perpetuity basis, it becomes a sale of goods. And there has to be some documentation to prove that export of goods has taken place. Means goods have moved out of India. In case of copyrights, due to intangible nature, it is at times difficult to prove it. And therefore, the claim of refund becomes a challenge here. Same applies for import of copyrights. When you're buying copyrights on perpetuity basis, the same challenge is there, whether you will be treating it as an import of service or import of goods. On a conservative basis, a lot of our clients, we have advised them that your position has to be, you have to claim it as an import of service only, pay 12% tax and claim corresponding refund, which is more better. Third aspect, we have seen many agreements of late which are coming up with between production houses and these online apps like Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc. Generally, what happens is that Netflix LLC USA, for example, which is the parent company in USA, they enter into an agreement with the film production houses. They tell them to develop the content here, and the content and all the rights associated with the content is transferred to Netflix LLC USA. There is some challenge here because these clients interact through their Indian subsidiaries like Netflix India or Amazon Prime India. And all the communication is between the Indian production house and the Indian subsidiary of the foreign company. Here, there is some challenge as to who is the recipient of service. Therefore, it is advisable that if you're dealing with Netflix, Amazon Prime or something, where there's a foreign entity and an Indian subsidiary, you are billing to foreign subsidiary to the foreign company, but all your interactions take place with the Indian subsidiary. You should get an endorsement, or you should get a letter of comfort from them, indemnity letter, that in case the export is denied to you, because you will be billing to foreign company, if that export benefit is denied to you, the tax would be paid by you to them, by them to you. Sorry, it is very important because the amounts will be substantial, right? Because see, currently when you are dealing with foreign client, you will be satisfying their conditions, but on the back end, you are identifying situation that there's a lot of interaction with Indian clients. An officer can come back to you tomorrow and say that no, your agreement is with foreign client, your location of resident is in India, therefore we will not allow the benefit of export of service. It is therefore advisable, I again reiterate, that wherever you are dealing in such cases, where you are billing to a foreign client, a lot of interactions takes place locally. In such case, you should have an indemnity letter from those clients that in case your export refund claim or your export benefit claim is not allowed by the officers, they will reimburse you the GST component along with interest and penalties. See, you have to note that adjudication of applications in India or assessments in India do not take place immediately. There is generally time gap of 2 to 3 years. And if after 3 years, if you are asked to pay up those taxes, the cost of it would be substantial because there would be interest and associated penalties. So it is important that you take care of it. Next part, like I already told you, if there is any supply of food and beverages from theater premises, that applicable tax rate would be 5%. There can be some dispute. Some might say it's a sale of goods, but generally there's a service element involved. Even in the theaters, at times they come to your seats to serve it. So it's advisable to take to say that they would be attracting 5% GST. This was the first part of our discussion so far, entertainment sector. We now move to the second sector of our today's discussion, media. In media, what happens is that generally there are 4 or 5 levels of media. One is the print, television, radio, out of home, and a newly developed segment of media called online media, Facebook ads, Google ads, and so on. The general tax rate which is applicable for this media is 18%, except in case of print media, where if you want to do an advertisement in a print media, the tax rate is 5%. But when you're doing print media, or if you're a company located involved in print sector, please note you also sell of newspapers or magazines. which are liable to nil rate, and that would attract you, or that will make you liable to proportionate reversal under Rule 42 or 43, which was also discussed in our ITC session last week. The more major issue here is agency transactions. See, in case of media, the publisher, as we generally call, he is located all over India and he is sale office. And there's an advertiser, the person who wants to advertise in that media. But generally the transaction is not directly between these two parties. There is an agency involved. So how the concept works is that the publisher or the media will bill to the agency 70 rupees or 85 rupees, and that agency cross bill to the advertiser of 100 rupees. Under the pre-GST regime, under service tax, there was an issue as to whether the agency is liable to pay tax on 15 rupees on the margin or not. Why? Because under service tax, there was no tax on advertisement in print media. And therefore the department wanted to treat that the margin is a commission earned by the agency. But now in GST, we have a different regime. There's a different position. In GST, advertisement in print media also takes 5%. So if we compare and contrast our service tax position with the GST position, there is a possible probability that the department might come back to you tomorrow and say that you pay tax on 100 at 5%, which you are recovering from the advertiser, and on your margin is a different supply and pay tax on it at 18%. We do not agree with that view, because in service tax model, though this intermediaries are termed as agency, the tribunal has on multiple occasions held that these agreements are on a P2P model, principal to principal model, and not principal to agent. And therefore, agencies will not be liable to pay tax on the margin. Their liability to pay tax will be only on the gross amount. That is the amount which they recover from their client on 100 rupees. And there will be corresponding credit of the amount which the media recovers from the agency. So this is one aspect which might need to be taken care of. Okay. Now there's also some specific issues here. One is identifying supplier and recipient. See, many times advertisements, when they are done in this medium, the advertisers are in multiple locations. The suppliers are in multiple locations. For example, you are a company which is in Mumbai. You want to place an advertisement in an All India edition of Times of India. But you will go and you will place an order in the Mumbai office. So your contract is between Mumbai office with the Mumbai office of Times of India. Though there will be advertisements to be placed in all over India. So you need to make sure that when you are dealing in advertisement, your supplier and recipient, you have to identify their location based on the contractual locations or the release orders. That's the term which is used in the industry. Now, when you do this, there will be a revenue mismatch. Why? Because the entire revenue sits in your Mumbai office. Let's say you're placed an ad with Times of India Mumbai for an all India advertisement. The entire revenue is in Mumbai office, but the entire expense is spread all over India, which results in a revenue cost mismatch. And therefore, in all such cases, wherever there's a revenue cost mismatch, you need to have a system of cross charge so that there's a balance of revenue and cost. What is the purpose behind this cross charge and this balance? Is to ensure that you have a proper equalization of input tax credit across your organization. Otherwise, what will happen is your other locations will have bulging up in electronic credit balance, whereas you will keep on paying tax in your Mumbai office because all revenues will be lying in Mumbai office. So this is one important aspect which you need to take care of. Second is when you're providing service to government for advertisements, you need to note that there is a specific rule for government advertisements, wherein you have to bill, the place of supply has to be determined as per the area where the advertisement is run. Suppose you are billing to Madhya Pradesh government for an ad to be placed for development of tourism in Times of India Maharashtra. So Times of India Maharashtra will bill to government of Madhya Pradesh, but they will have to say that the place of supply for this service is Maharashtra because the intended audience was in Maharashtra. This is one part. Second part, these orders for placement of advertisements by government are at times not coming directly from the government, but through intermediary agencies. In this case also, you have to make sure that when you are billing to an agency, you will decide place of supply as per the location of recipient and not as per the place where the advertisement is actually placed. Because like we discussed in the other slide, the transaction is on a P2P model. When the agency bills to the government, he will say place of supply is Madhya Pradesh. But when the Times of India is billing to agency, we have to say the place of supply is the location of the agency. Second part, out of home advertisements. As you would know, there are many billboards which are erected all over the country where advertisements are placed, airports, metro stations, railway stations, where they put up billboards for advertisement. Now it is possible that a company which is based in Maharashtra might place its advertisements in Delhi. Whether this, okay, and the question that here arises is whether in case of this kind of such advertisement services, the tax to be charged by that vendor, whether it will say place of supply is Delhi because the services are relating to a advertisement which is published in Delhi property, or relating to Mumbai because the recipient of service is Mumbai. See, in this case, you will have to note that out of home advertisement, the service is in relation to advertisement and not in relation to property. And therefore, the place of supply has to be the location of service recipient and not place where the advertisement is aired or published. That is one part. Next comes composite versus mixed supplies. Many times these media houses or agencies provide an all-inclusive advertising package where they do advertisement for a lump sum amount in print media and various other forms of media. In this case, there is people say that, okay, they are also providing me services of print media and also of advertising in other media. What rate should be applied? In this case, you have to take a view that this is a composite supply of advertising service, which involves various medium, but the tax rate will be 18%. It's a blanket service of advertising, all encompassing the other through various modes of advertising media. Next is a proportionate reversal. Like I said, if they're providing exempt service, in case of print media, there's an exemption. You will need to take comply with rules 40 to 43 and take note of that. Revenue and cost mismatch, we already discussed. The need for cross charge when there's a mismatch between your location where the revenue is booked and the location where the advertisement is actually published. The next part is the event service. Events generally takes place in case of corporate events and also non-corporate events, like some cultural functions and all. There are mainly 4 or 5 streams of revenue here. One is sponsorship service. Second is brand promotion or advertising service. Exhibition service, meaning stall charges. Delegate fees or admission service in case of corporate events. And ticketing revenue in case of non-corporate events like concerts or Garba nights and all those things. Let us go into each and every aspect here. The first area of concern is the place of supply. In case of place of supply, there are 2 rules. I am sure you will be aware. There are different rules for domestic transactions and different rules for international transaction. In case of domestic transaction, that is where location of supplier of service and location of recipient of service is in India. There is section 12(6) says that the place of service is provided by way of admission to. Now, this rule talks about services relating to admission only. By way of admission to a cultural, artistic, sporting, scientific, educational, entertainment event or amusement park shall be the place where the event is actually held. So, for example, if you are organizing a concert in Mumbai and a company in Gujarat books 10 passes, in that case, the place of supply is Mumbai only because the event is to be held in Mumbai, and therefore, even if the client who is located in Gujarat and registered, yet you will have to charge him tax assuming POSs or considering that the place of supply is in Maharashtra. Whether or not a client is registered, it is irrespective of that fact. In case of ticketing events, for events, the place of supply will have to be taken as per the location where the event is actually held. But this rule does not apply to conferences. For conferences, there is no mention of exception. And therefore, if it is a conference which you are organizing here, if it's an admission to a conference like a global business service like a global business show, which is done every year in New Delhi, or any business conference that you are attending and you pay some delegate fees, in that case, the place of supply will be as per the general rule. Meaning if a person from Gujarat is attending a conference in Maharashtra, though the conference is in Maharashtra, the Maharashtra guy will have to charge him with POS of Gujarat. Because the exception under section 12(6) does not apply, the place of supply will have to be determined as per the general rule only. The next part, the place of supply of services of supply of service provided by way of organization of a cultural, artistic, sporting, scientific, educational or entertainment event, including supply of services in relation to a conference, fair, exhibition, celebration or similar events. This is important. This says that if I am organizing an event and if I am taking some services from some third party to organize that event, this is what is covered by this entry. And they are also saying that any services which are ancillary to organization of the event, if I as an event organizer provide any services in relation to that organizing, like sponsorship services, for example, in this case, there will be the rule of B2B rule apply, meaning if you are billing to a registered person, you will bill him as per his location of such person. So if I'm organizing an event in Mumbai and I want to sell sponsorship rights of that event to someone that is located in Delhi, I can sell it to him in Delhi only. I can sell it to him stating that the place of supply is Delhi and not Maharashtra, because of the 7B1, which says that if the services are provided to a registered person, the place of supply shall be the location of such person. And second clause, to a person other than a registered person shall be the place where the event is actually held. And if the event is held outside India, the place of supply shall be the location of recipient. Here there is one catch to take to note, that in case of exhibition services, if the event is held outside India, even though service provider and service recipient are in India, there is an exemption which has been provided, but it is restricted only to exhibition service and not for conference or some other events. Next rule we come to is POS rule for international events. Meaning, if I am in India organizing an event and someone from outside India wants to attend that event or wants to buy sponsorship rights of that event. So let us understand the rule, what it says first. The place of supply of services supplied by way of admission to or organization of a cultural, artistic, sporting, scientific, educational, or entertainment event, or a celebration, conference, fair, exhibition, or similar events, and of services similar to such admission or organization shall be the place where event is actually held. What it means, that if someone from outside India, let's say, and he wants to attend an event in India, irrespective of the type of event, the place of supply will be the location where the event is actually held. So for delegate fees, you'll be liable to pay GST under GST. Why? Because they are specifically covering celebration, conference, fair, exhibition in this entry, which was missing in the earlier slide when we looked into the domestic transaction. However, this rule does not apply to your sponsorship service. So if I want to sell sponsorship rights of an event to be held in India to a foreign client, that transaction would continue to be classifiable as an export of service, even though the event is being held in India. Next, there are some specific rates which have been prescribed. Admission or access to circus, classical dances, including folk dance, theatrical performances, drama and planetarium, 18%. Cinema hall, if the price of ticket is less than 100, 12%, more than 100, 18%. Earlier it was 18 and 28%, which has now been reduced to 12 and 18%. Admission to amusement parks, including theme parks, water parks like SL World or Imagica, it is 18%. Services by way of admission to entertainment events or access to amusement facilities like casino, race club, any sporting events such as IPL and the like, it is 28%. Similarly, there are some exemptions like admission to museum, national park, wildlife sanctuary, or tiger reserve zoo. There is no GST on that. Same way, right of admission to circus, dance, or theatrical performance, including drama or ballet, award functions, recognized sporting event, and all, where the ticket is for less than where the ticket is for less than 500 rupees per person, there is an exemption. There is a small correction. Here it will be for more than 500 rupees, clause A. Services by way of admission, if it's more than 500 rupees, only then 18%. If it is less, then there's an exemption provided. The last slide for today's discussion. Ticketing through online portals. A lot of times these events, the ticketing is done through online portals like Book My Show. Please note that Book My Show works on a P2A model, meaning he does not issue the ticket. He only does X on your behalf, and therefore he charges the organizer of the event his commission charges. So when you are an event organizer and you are selling tickets through Book My Show or someone like that, you need to make sure that you are issuing some bill of supply invoice on the back end, or some ticket records are available with you for future transactions. Tomorrow officers can come back to you and say that you are seeing ticketing revenue, show us the tickets issued or invoices issued for that. There has to be bill of supply or tax invoice for those transactions. Second issue, place of supply will be there an issue of credit blockage. Same way, like film industry, we said, if any shooting is done outside the state where you are registered, there might be a credit blockage. Same issue continues for events also. If you are organizing an event in a state where you are not registered, there will be credit blockage. You might need to look into either a event organizer in that particular state or yourself taking registration in that state and doing the entire transaction to make sure that there is no credit loss due to the POS mismatch. Third part, sponsorship. As we all know, sponsorship is under reverse charge mechanism. But there is a lot of time an issue that whether what is meant by sponsorship, whether merely mentioning the word sponsorship is sufficient in the agreement, or it has to be sponsorship in its true sense. Why this question comes? Because many times, even on online shows, when there are sponsors, let's say there's an Kapil Sharma show, he says that presented to you by Vivo, or someone like says sponsored by someone. Generally, sponsorship, if you go back to service tax regime, it is said that it is something which is in relation to an event. Therefore, when you're looking at a sponsorship arrangement, you should see first aspect whether there's an event associated with that sponsor, which you are being sponsoring. If there is not an event, only as a marketing gimmick, someone uses the word sponsorship, you might want to be cautious at the time of deciding whether RCM is applicable or not. And more importantly, it is advisable that you avoid branding transactions as sponsorship. Why? Because when you say it's a sponsorship, you are not liable to pay tax under reverse. You are not liable to pay tax because it's a reverse tax transaction. So you will be it will be assumed that you are providing exempt services, which would trigger the need for credit reversal proportionately, thus increasing your own cost, your own compliance burden. So far as possible, it is advisable that you avoid sponsorship deals. If you are doing sponsorship deals, keep it clear to your clients. Make sure that your business people are aware about this particular aspect. And thirdly, there's a proportionate reversal which you are required to take care of. That's all from my side. I think I have completed it within my time break, within my scheduled time. So if there are any queries, we will be taking that up now. Okay, there is one query which is relating to what is the meaning of P2A. So generally P2A means when you are acting as an agent, there are two kinds of transactions. One where you are acting on your own account, and second is when you are acting as an agent or as a selling agent of the other person. That is the only difference. In case of P2A, my revenue source is commission income, and there will be TDS of under section 194H on my income. That is the only difference in P2B versus P2A. Department is taking a stand that when you are doing a P2A model, you are supplying on behalf of your agent, so pay tax on that, and whatever is the margin, whatever you earn from the transactions, it's a separate supply that you have made to your principal, and you have to pay tax on that as a commission. Okay, any other queries? Okay. Thank you all for such a, okay, we have one more query. Reimbursement of expenses outside India is not covered under RCM, and reimbursement within India is covered under RCM. See, when an expense is this is a query from Visham Nevatia. When you are outside India, and let's say there's some expense which are incurred outside India, most of the times what happens is that the place of supply of those expenses would also be outside India. You need to look into the specific method expense which is incurred. Let's say if you are incurring some hotel accommodation, the place of supply as per the rule itself is outside India. And when the location of supplier and place of supply is outside India, the question of paying GST does not arise. Whereas in case of you are in India and there is some expense which you have incurred, in that case, the POS is in the taxable territory, and therefore the liability to pay GST gets triggered. Okay, and therefore this is the distinction in these two cases: reimbursement from outside India and reimbursement in India. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, all of you, for a wonderful session. I hope all of you are staying home. I request you all to stay home, stay safe, and take care of all of your loved ones during these troubled times. We'll continue with our session tomorrow. Thank you very much. Good day to all of you.